everybody seeing the PowerPoint? Okay.
Yes.
So, as Todd said, it's a show and tell. Tonight, I'm going to talk about a dynamic survey tool that we built using FileMaker and FM BetterForms. And if we run out of time, I've got something else fun I was playing with too, but I feel like we can easily fill up the time with this. So feel free to yell at me, Todd, if I take too long, if I don't stop talking and everyone wants to go home. Okay. So what I didn't say in the introduction is I'm a self-proclaimed and mostly self-taught FileMaker addict. I've been doing this since 1990 in all different versions as an in-house developer, as a consultant, and everything in between. I have certifications. I got 9, and then I didn't get any for a couple of years because I was on my own and didn't want to pay for it. But since 13, I've had every certification that's come up, including the current 19, which isn't really called 19. I forget what it's called. I think it's called 2020. But anyway, and I found my professional home at IT Solutions almost 9 years ago now. So that seems to be a good fit, and we'll go on from there. So why did we build a survey tool in FileMaker? We basically were commissioned by a nonprofit. They have a website, and they provide support for families who have children with cancer, which is a horrible thing, but they do a good job trying to help provide resources and support to people and do events and so on. I'm not going to tell you who they are or anything else more than that, but we built the tool for them because they wanted to gather resources to help caregivers to take care of themselves, kind of fill out a self-assessment survey and then get an email with, what they answered and what their results might mean and some resources and so on. The current iteration of the database, now they did not have any database, or they had nothing. They had an Excel spreadsheet with some questions in it. So we recommended FileMaker for the database because they needed a tool to gather information, and that's a nice, cost-effective and easy to use start into a database world. So we set them up with that, but they didn't want anything fancy in the first go around. It's kind of a pilot program to see if people actually use the survey and so on. So eventually in future iterations, it will do more fancy things with the data. Right now it's just literally somebody fills out a survey, you have all of their answers. They can come back every month, every 2 months, every year, every day, whatever they want, and take the survey again. Now, right now, there's no login to this. It's all basically anonymous, though they do provide their email address if they want their results. But eventually, they'll be able to expand the solution to log back in with their email address and see what they've said in the past, and chart their results and that sort of thing. But right now, this is first draft, just getting started. And so for tonight, I anonymized it just to show you how it works, because I got to thinking how this could really work for any type of survey. And the way we built it is pretty dynamic, so that you can have, you can change your questions. And I'll show you, it's very simple to make a change in FileMaker, and instantly the web reflects your changes. Why BetterForms for the web piece? Because the client they needed their users to be able to do this via a web browser. Unfortunately, WebDirect licenses are pretty cost prohibitive. And at this point, they have no idea how many people are going to be actually using the tool. So it didn't make sense to get some big WebDirect license, or even get a small one and then not have enough seats and so on, when they really don't know how it's going to get used. The BetterForms platform lets you literally use one license for all web transactions, regardless of whether there's one hit or 100,000. The client also needed an easy way to customize their website and review their data. So while they're not doing the BetterForms development, because this tool is designed to integrate FileMaker databases with web development, it makes it easy for them to make minor changes without having to go through a web designer. And really because FM BetterForms is just really cool. All right, so let me see. If I bring this over here, can you see this in front of the PowerPoint? Are you seeing a little web browser? All right, then I'm just going to leave the PowerPoint going in the background there. So this is my browser. This is just a Chrome browser. First thing you'll notice is it's kind of dynamic, or responsive, I guess is the word, right, when you're on a web page. So you can get fairly small and things kind of reposition. There's a little bit of text. I'm doing this on my laptop, unfortunately, so height, I don't have as much height as I would have on a desktop. And if I showed it to you on my phone, obviously it would fit on the phone and you just, scroll down till you see everything. So, but you can see, it's fairly responsive. I'm not doing anything fancy to make that happen. I'm going to hit the Start Your Self-Assessment button. And here's my first question. So they had a rating scale, so I'm just using their scale. And I changed a few things just to make it anonymous, but, I'm not really going to pause and read any of the questions. I'm just showing how you'd fill out a survey, right? Okay. Oops, did I hit next? Oh, and I'll also show if I hit next without it, it tells me this is required. So, okay, I answered it. Now I can continue and so on. Oh, wait, no, if I need to go back, I can go back and see, okay, then move forward again. So this is all in a web browser. This is not FileMaker, okay? The data comes from FileMaker, but this is not FileMaker. Right now, we're just loading up a JSON object on a website, and we're not doing anything else with it yet. Okay, so now I get to my last question, and you can see the buttons went away. This is my last question. So once I answer my last question, then I get this information. Thank you for completing the survey. And I can put my email address in and type my name, and I'm not going to bother with my phone or opting in right now. I hit my button, you can see it's spinning, and then it says, thank you for completing the survey, check your email. Now, I will say I can't show you the email that it sent because we just changed our SMTP settings and it broke everything, and I haven't had time to fix that. But it really does work if you have valid SMTP settings. So that's the website. Now I'm going to just move that over here out of the way. And now I'm going to bring over the database. Okay. So here's the database. Very bare bones, very basic, very simple. The button here that is most noticeable is survey results, because the client needed something really simple to just show me the results of all of my surveys, right? So I'm just going to click here and you can see I've had 5 surveys completed, okay? And I'm clicking through them and I can see the questions and answers. They're here. Now, if you notice way back here, there were 33 questions. I'll get to that in a minute. And now I've only got, well, less than 33. The numbers are skipping some, and I'll explain that in a minute. But this is the one, April 6th at 7:17 that I just filled out. Okay, and you can see here, this is what I filled out on the web form, my email address, my name, and so on. I didn't fill in the phone number or the opt-in. But over here, you can see this is what they should receive via email. I'm going to make this wider just to show you. They get an HTML email out of it with the logo, and here are your responses. So for each question they asked, here's what the answer was. And then if you answered primarily not at all or mild, here's what that might mean, etc. So you get some information. There's some resources in here. They even have links. It's a real link that I can go to a website. Of course, I don't know how to get back because I didn't put a back button in here, but let's see if I can jump out and back to get my default back again. I just wanted you to see the link is actually live, and so on. So this is what they get in an email, and it really does show up as HTML like this. fit again back here. So, any questions before I continue?
Oh, I guess I have one question.
Cool. It's very cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
So how is it dynamic?
Actually,
go ahead.
I have a quick question, Beth, and it may be a side question, so if you want to skip it and come back to it, but I know you had been asking about problems with images in a HTML email. Was it on this project or was it another one that you had been working on?
It was this project.
And did you get it figured out, or are you still battling it?
The way that I solved it was I did not use the base64 encoding that was from my sample file. I am pointing to images that live on a web server, so they have a URL. So it works because URLs are always working. If the website exists, if that web folder exists and has a valid URL, then the images work. So it was faster and more reliable. So
okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had the same questions. Thanks, sir, and thank you.
Yeah. Excuse me. I have seen implementations of different HTML emails where people do use base64 encoded images, but the results are not consistent in my experience. So going to using just a URL to point to solved that problem. And we can go more under the hood later to show that. So how is this dynamic? Okay, so here's the questions page. There's only a few tables in here. So surveys, that's the results we already looked at. And this is basically when somebody hit that button to email my results on the web page, that runs a hook through BetterForms to talk to the FileMaker database and create the survey record and put the data into the record. It puts it in as a JSON object, and then we parse it out into the responses. Okay, so there's this survey table and there's a responses table that's not visible, but it's where all these line items live. Okay, now the reason you're seeing gaps in numbering and missing answers is because this is dynamic. And what I mean by that is we have a resource table where we determine what the different data is that populates different places on the website. And we have a questions table that determines what the category is, what the question is, what image pertains, what image goes along with that question, and so on. And we have active and inactive. So I don't know if you can see it too well on the recording, but this one is, question number 1 here, and it's not grayed out. But if I look at this one, there's the strike through there is helping me see visually this is not an active question, right? So if you remember when I was going through the survey, there was 1 question on every page. We've built this so that it's dynamic and you could have actually up to 4 questions on every page. So the user can control what those questions are, what order they're in, and so on. So I'm going to make some of these active that I had made inactive before. But before I show you the survey itself, I'm going to jump to the resources page. So if you look here, I've got lots of resource records, okay? But each record is kind of representing a paragraph. So the paragraphs for the start page of the web portal. This is the start page of the web portal, okay? And if you notice, it says sample text goes here. And if you notice here, introduction on web portal, sample text goes here, okay? So this is actually the text that appears in that paragraph, right? So if I want to change that, okay. So I just changed that text, and now I'm also going to just randomly pick a different paragraph here and make it active. Okay. So I changed text here, and this that was off, I turned back on, so it's active. If I come here, whoops, let me keep it small so you can see it, and I literally refresh my browser, ta-da, hello to the FMburgh community. So the text I had here and this second paragraph have now become visible on this web page. And all I had to do was, turn an active tab on or off and type the text. So now if we go into my self-assessment, you'll also notice that now page 1 doesn't just have one question. It now has 3 questions. Okay. Now I didn't change all the others, so they're still there. I'm just gonna keep jumping through here. I should probably have shortened the number of pages for the demo so we don't have to click through 13 pages to get to what we want to do. But I just want to kind of bring home how this works. And I'll send that to my personal email. And thank you. Okay. And now if I come back here and I look at my surveys, here's the new one to somebody at my personal email. And you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, where if we go back, 2 and 3 didn't have answers before. That's a problem in my own coding. It was still showing a placeholder for them, but there was nowhere to put the answer. There was no question on the website, so there was no answer. Okay, that's why you're seeing 2 and 3 were there, but had no answer. Okay, because those questions weren't visible on the web. That was my fault because of how I have the data model set up on the website. Okay, I'll show you that. I can show you that under the hood. But the other ones were not there. Well, I didn't add questions to any of the other pages, but if I added questions, we can go do that just for fun. We'll turn on some other pages, turn some of these on that were inactive, just so we can see that they'll show up. And here we go again. Let's make this narrower just so we can see more without having to scroll. Now there's a million things. I mean, if you're like me, every time I work on something, my mind starts thinking about what else could I do? What else could I do? So there's absolutely a million things that we could potentially do that we're not doing right now, but there's all kinds of possibilities. So let's do this again. I'm not going to bother putting a name. I'm just putting an email so that a record gets created. If I don't put an email address, then it won't write the record back here. Okay, so now we get down to, so you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 2 and 3 didn't have in the older survey. They didn't have answers because the question didn't show up on the website. In this one, the question showed up, so there was a place to fill it in. And now if you notice on this one, there are more answers. There were only, 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 10, 13, etc. So now we have 8 and 9 are here as well, and so on. So you get the idea. And then let's see, what other resources do we have here? On here we have, these are the paragraphs for the first page. Oh, and then there's an introduction paragraph for the email. Okay. If you remember, let's see if I can put that in a new window just to try to make it bigger. Okay, so this is the introduction paragraph in the email, because this web viewer is illustrating what the HTML email will be that the user gets. Okay, so this is the paragraph that shows up here. So if I were to change that resource, so you can see here, Thank you for taking the time, completing the self-demo, blah, blah, blah. So I can change this text as well, and then it's going to change what they see here. Now I can also rebuild this without having to go through the whole survey again. I'll show you that in a minute. But let's look at some of the other. So that was that paragraph, and then result explanation paragraphs. That was the stuff, you know, that says if you answered primarily not at all or mild, and so on, you know, that's these paragraphs. So all of these things are modifiable by the database user. So as whenever they make a change, then it's going to show up there. Now, if you're like me, you're thinking, well, that's really powerful and awesome. However, it's a different experience then. So you can't compare apples to apples if you keep changing things. And it's not really designed to version track. So that's something to consider for the future for them, to have some sort of versioning. I don't know how we'll do that, but
you're capturing at that point in time what that survey had on it, right?
correct.
I mean, it comes back in the JSON as that's what it was. And if you go back and change the survey, it's not going to change what you've got in that historical JSON.
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
So, you know, if the question, if number one was I have felt lonely, and then we change that to hello, my name is Todd, then even though it's still question number one, we have the real question and the answer to that specific question. So it just means that any analysis we do is going to have to be on the literal text versus the key of the question. But yes, we have it all in the JSON, and I actually store the JSON result and then we parse it out. So if these line items even got destroyed, we could reproduce them from the JSON because it's just in a text field. And then the other resources I was showing you. Oh, I'm in the wrong. I was clicking here. Let's go back to the survey. Right. So we talked about those paragraphs, and then these things down here, the resources. Those are other. So results explanation and the concluding paragraphs. Now, this is where it gets interesting, and you can see the evolution of my learning curve. Okay, because when I first started doing it, I had to be very literal because I didn't know how to do any of this stuff. Okay, where I have to basically get it as CSS so that it puts tags on everything so that I can have dynamic HTML text. And so you can see how, you know, they're colored links and returns and spacing and so on the way I want it to be. On my previous resources and records, it was literally one paragraph per record was my way of solving it. So I know now that I can do my own HTML in here to make it even more dynamic. Right. So, and ignore the fact that those are strike through because that's my visual indicator. This particular section doesn't care whether it's active or not. That's my own problem that I didn't solve yet, but it still gets the paragraphs to the web. So that one doesn't show up, I don't think. So anyway, that is pretty much how it all works. And I guess I don't need both windows open. And what are the questions? Where do you want to go from here in exploring?
Is there any way you can show just a little bit of what it looks like to build this in BetterForms? If not, that's fine, because I've seen demos of it.
I can, yes, let me find. There we go. Okay, so this is my BetterForms login. This is actually the old editor. They've got a new editor that I'm not sure if it's still in beta or if it's been released, but I have not migrated my sites yet. The fact that I have something typed in here is isolating my pages to just the pages I want to see. Okay, I'm not going to show you everything in my site here, but basically with BetterForms, when you have an account, you can have multiple sites, multiple servers, and so on. So I have like 6 different clients who have BetterForms solutions with us. So there's a server for each of those. And then you have a site. So this particular implementation is my ITS survey demo site. Okay. And then these are the pages that go with that site. Okay. So this whole website is 2 pages. It's this start page. Okay. So this is the code and the information I need essentially right here. This chunk of code, that is it to create this page. Okay. And then this page, all the other pages you see. Now I did work with, I don't know if any of you have done anything with BetterForms. Charles Delphs is the engineer who started the company, and he's the founder of this. He's really wonderful. He works literally one-on-one with everyone to get them started. And you can buy support time too, though they give you an awful lot of free support to help you understand things, because as FileMaker developers, which is really what I am, this is foreign to me. I get things in concept, but I don't know HTML, so to speak, or CSS, or now Tailwind, which is the preferred styling to use for the site. But they do help you along with all of that. So let's look at, if we get into one of these pages, there's an image. There's some information here. And if you remember, as we were going through before, it's page 1 of 13, 2 of 13, 3 of 13, and so on. So it's progressing. It knows what page you're on. And then it shows you the questions. And anywhere from 1 to, in this case, I have up to 3 questions on the page. We worked through a way, instead of me building 13 pages in the solution, which is how I started out. When I showed Charles what I was doing and I had some questions, he said, well, why don't we make it dynamic? You have just 1 page, and the data model, which is your data that comes out of FileMaker, decides what to put on the page, right? So all the pages in the site, except for that start page, are part of this one programming page, okay? So you can see here, everything in a BetterForms solution is based on a data model. Okay, so model.pages is where it tells me what my active page is. And let's see. Here it's telling me how many total pages I'm going to have. Okay, here it's telling me, you know, it's looking at the category, that kind of thing. So it's looking at the data model to determine what is actually shown on the page. So here, this is the question, right? So this is the first question for that page, because JSON is 0 based. So that's question number 1 is the 0 object. Question number 2 is going to be here, 1, and so on. In all cases, we know we're doing radio buttons, and this is our list of values to choose from. That's on the website. That's not coming from FileMaker. I don't know if I could make it come from FileMaker. I might be able to. So it's an interesting question.
Yeah, I would think you could be able to pass your question and your values to choose.
I think so. I would think that instead of these quotes here, it would be, you know, model response 1, model response 2, you know, what have you. I would think so. I just haven't tried it. And then here's a visibility calc, right? So it's only going to show the question if there is a question there for that page question, right? So it disappears if there's no question being passed from the data model. Making sense? Cool. Let me pull this over here for a second real quick. I'm just making sure
Yeah,
that.
just wanted to, because you've got the same radio buttons, you know, that's fine that you've got it like that, you know, hard coded in. But there are times when I've done surveys where I've had to have radio buttons or text box or, you know, something,
Right.
text boxes. And so that would definitely be a dynamic aspect that you would want to pull from your database. So here are my possibilities, and oh, by the way, they're going to be checkboxes, and you know.
Right. And I mean, we've done a number of other solutions, and most of them are not as dynamic as this one. I mean, this one really determines what the image is going to be, what category presenting, what the question is. We've done a lot of other solutions where it's more hard coded. The website's not really going to change. So I know that this question I'm presenting is going to be a checkbox. This one's going to be a radio button. This one's going to be a text area where I might 3 or 4 or 5 lines. And so the pages are built that way with those objects. But this particular site, because it was literally a bunch of survey questions, let me just turn this on to show you here. When you're in development mode, it's really helpful because you can see here what your data model looks like. So it knows that I'm on page 1. It knows the category for that page is emotional well-being. Here's the URL to get the image that goes with that page because we told the database what to put here, okay? And let's see. My active page. So actually this whole page right here. Oh no, how do I highlight that? There's supposed to be a way. No. Okay, well, yeah, so there's a bunch of different arrays. I guess I am not good on my JSON terminology. I believe it's an array when you have a group with a bunch of stuff in it. So I'm collapsing all of these, right? So you know what, let me collapse it this way. So I have an array here of pages. So this is where it knows, you know, page 1 is emotional well-being. Page 2 is also the emotional well-being category, so is page 3. But then when you get to page 5, we're in isolation category. You know, page 8, we're up to cognitive thinking concerns and so on. So it also knows how many questions are on each page, right? So that's all loaded into the data model. And then the survey itself has places. And this is why questions 2 and 3 were showing up with no answer, because I have a sample data model part of my structure here. If I didn't have that, 2 and 3 wouldn't have shown up when there was no. So that's just, I forgot to turn that off. Here's the resources that get loaded into the JSON. So it knows, you know, for each page, what it has to put and where it has to put it. So that's all in there. My total page is here. And then these are the actual questions, right? So this is where it knows if it is survey A1, it knows that question should say, I have felt lonely. If it's survey A3, it's going to present this text. So it's all coming from the JSON. Does that make sense?
Very cool.
Thank you. Thank you. Anything else? Has anybody else worked with FM BetterForms before?
Yeah, I've just seen demos of it, and I don't have any clients that need it. But I've worked as a web developer as long as I've worked with FileMaker. So
Yeah.
it was pretty easy when I was talking to Charles and said, wow, this is really phenomenal what he's
It
done.
really is neat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's got a
And
whole team of people now that, you
Mhm.
know, are answering questions and helping, and it's so great.
Yeah. Yeah, they're very helpful. Very helpful. It's exciting because I haven't really done any web development. So this is sort of like dipping my toe in the water, but we're able to do this because of cool tools like that. So what I didn't talk to you about was authentication. It's also in this particular solution, we are completely dynamic, or not dynamic, anonymous, I guess, basically. You don't have to log in to use this survey. Okay, so they're going to have a link on their real website that takes people to here to fill out the survey. Most clients who have a BetterForms solution have a security layer, and you have to have authentication. So you start with a login page, and you put in a username and a password, and then you get permission to enter the site. And that's really easy to do too, because BetterForms has these sample pages that you can use. So these are the 5 pages that you add to every solution. And they've actually got it now that when you set up a new site, if you tell them you want this, it'll preset these 5 pages for you. And then you just, put your own logo on it, kind of thing. But it's a self-serve registration, which is really cool because you send out your registration link to your clients. They put their email address, and they pick their own password. If they forget their password, there's a reset here. There's a forgot password. Whoops, I was supposed to hit the back button and I didn't. Here we go. Yeah. So if they forgot their password, they'll be able to use that. Let me just show you. I think this will do a preview to show you what it would look like. Yeah, here we go. So, picture it customized with your own logo and that sort of thing. But that's what it looks like, right? They put their name, their email, their password. Now, the only thing you need to do in FileMaker is have a table that has the email addresses of the people you grant permission to, right? So that somebody you don't want to come in won't be able to get in, because if their email address isn't in that table, BetterForms will check on registration. If they're not in that table, they'll say, you're not authorized to use this site, kind of thing. Or you can set up a scenario where they can request permission. If they're not already in the table, it sends an email to the client and says, so-and-so wants to log into the portal. Do you want to give them permission? That kind of thing. So really, really flexible and dynamic. But the user takes care of all of this. So you're not worrying about creating user accounts in FileMaker and having to manage any of that or deal with forgotten passwords or anything like that. So it's pretty cool.
Thank you. That was good. Kind of step through the overview of that, because like I said, I've seen demos, and when you talk to Charles, it gets real deep and it gets real complex, and you've got something you've shown us, and then you kind of, well, here it helps me build it. You go like, yay.
Yeah. I thought I'd seen your name on the Slack channel for BetterForms.
Yeah.
Thought maybe we're using it too, but yeah, it's cool. I wish I could spend more time learning it and playing with it, but basically, if we run into something we can't easily figure out, we engage them to help us. But everything they teach us, we can use again in the next solution. So
like I said, I don't have any clients that are willing to pay me to do it. So other than just kind of looking at what they've got, I've got looked at the code and how they're doing things and the samples they've got, and but I said I don't even want to spend a lot of time on that, because you just priorities are make money.
Exactly. Yeah, you can go down a real rabbit hole with the cool stuff,
Yeah,
but if no
yeah.
one's paying for the cool stuff, is it really worth it?
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay, how are we doing on time? Todd, do you want me to? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're doing good on time. I mean, depending on whether people have, follow-up questions on this or just general FileMaker questions. If you have something else you want to share, that's great. Or if you just want to save it for the next time I have to call you and say, Beth, can you bail me out of a jam and present something at a meeting? That's up to you.
Well, actually, I just looked. I have, like I said, multiple monitors, and I've got a bunch of stuff open and queued up here. And there is something more on the BetterForms that I do want to pull over here to show people. So this file, it's called the BetterForms helper, comes with, when you're setting up a site, the integration requires that you come here and you copy these custom functions, you go and you paste them into your file. And I think you do need to have base elements installed just for the copy custom function process. It sets up your file, and let's go under the hood here just to show you this entire folder right here, this FM BetterForms hooks, okay? Big folder, all kinds of stuff in here, all right? This is the meat of how it all ends up working. All of these things, this whole first set is common hooks, okay? Which is used by all the scripts. And then for every module in your solution, which for me is just one because it's the survey, you have a subfolder that are hooks specific to that, okay? So important to know is this on form request and this on utility. These two are the real meat of how things work, because when you are in BetterForms, so if I'm on my page here, let's go back to these pages, okay. In the integration, you say enable on form request, right? And this is the scoped care hook, right? So what happens is when the user hits the web page, it runs this on form request. Whoops, I closed my folder. I put it here, is on form request, right? So it comes in here and it starts loading up this global variable called the BF model. This is all of your JSON, right? So it comes in here and it gets my resources, and then it adds my page array, and it adds my questions. So it's loading up all of this stuff. So that's what the form request hook does. And then when you hit that save button later on at the end of the survey, okay, it is coming in here and saying, okay, if the option that I picked, which is what's attached to my save button, go do all this stuff, right? So it sends them, see this BF action, if you remember seeing a thank you for completing the survey, that's where that text lives, right here, right? So I could change this to something else, and the next time someone submits a survey, the message they get that pops up is going to say whatever text I put here. So a BF action is going to cause a dialog box to show up for somebody. And then this script, that's setting up my HTML email, but the hook basically comes in here, sets everything up, does everything there, it emails my script, and so on. So these scripts are how it talks to the website. But this file, there it is. By default, it's called BetterForms_helper. I renamed this one just to be clear that it goes with my demo file. But it has an inbox, and every transaction, everything that happens on the website gets written into here. So you've got all of your JSON for everything that's happening, and it can be used to help you debug things. right? Because if something's not happening the way you expect, you come in here and you run the hook and it runs it as if you were doing it, on the website, but you turn your debugger on first. I didn't do it. I just hit the button. But you turn your debugger on so you can find out what's going on and see what's in your variables and that sort of thing. So you can track down your problems. So everything is here. And then this user table right now, I just have one record in here. This is the table that manages that authentication that I told you about. So if you have registered users, it's going to come here. Is there an email address for Beth Latta? It's going to create here. Okay. And then there's a verification and an enable, right? So we have to set those things. So the user will get an email with a verification link. They have to hit that link, which comes back here, finds their record and sets that to 1. And after they're verified, then they can log in. So this helper file is truly helpful. And you generally want that. It has to be on the server in the same directory with your file so that it can find it. And then there's just a simple spot in here, this configure here, where you have to point it to your file to running the dispatch script in your file. So that's how it knows where to go, and everything else is handled by the code that goes between them. So generally you make this a hidden file on your FileMaker server. So it's out there and useful, but not in your face. Okay, that covers this solution. I'm done with this solution now. Unless anybody has any other questions, comments.
Yeah, I put a link in the chat, but I'm not sure that's the right one. That's the GitHub, and that's the one I was looking at. So maybe you actually go to their website and.
I have. Let me pop this in the chat. I do have that actually on this next page.
Okay.
BetterForms.com, www.betterforms.com, I guess. I'm not sure, honestly, why there's the hashtag in it, but when I put that, it seems to work to get me to their site. Without it, I don't know. Sometimes I end up in a weird place, but this is where it takes me. So this is their site now.
Yeah, it's a dynamic site, and so it calls using that hashtag. It calls things using that hashtag, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and I'll make sure those links are in the follow-up email that'll go out.
Yeah.
So.
It's 8 o'clock. If you want, I have one other quick little thing I can show, or we can, this is enough for people and there's one more thing, I can shut up. You tell me.
Well, I guess maybe we'll do that. We'll see if anybody has one more thing. And then if nobody has one more thing, we can come back to your one more thing. Does that work?
Sure.
Okay. Does anybody have one more thing? A question or?
Well, a quick question and a comment. Beth, it was very good. When you were talking about having multiple versions, could you, just like it's dynamic as far as having which icons show up and which questions show up, could you not have another field defined that was version number?
Yeah, probably.
And then if you then pass that back out when you wanted to do the analysis of the results.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, that should work.
Neat.
Anybody else? I guess I'll jump in then because I had one more thing. And I think I've heard of this technique, but I've never actually used it myself. And what it was is that we have working on a like a multi-file solution for a customer. And in one of my scripts, I'd added a check to see whether certain conditions were met before, the user was able to pick an option for, what the area that they were in. But rather than, creating a calculation and all that kind of stuff, I just used execute SQL and then just got my information that way. Well, then last week, early this week, no, it was last week, doesn't matter, was asked for them to see that same information in one of the other files. And I was like, okay, how am I going to do this? Because it's just something that I calculate on the fly. It's not stored with the record in the table that they want to see. So how do I do that? And I was like, I wonder if this would work. And what I did is I used a button bar, since you can calculate the text that's in a button bar, or like the labels for your button bar segments. So I made it as one segment button bar, inserted that same calculation, and then just changed all of the formatting and stuff for the button bar so that it looked like a merge field with no background or wasn't clickable or anything like that to display my result. And it appears to be working. So I was just kind of curious to see if anybody had ever used that trick, or if they hadn't, just to let you know that it's something that can be done.
Neat.
Yeah, I have not done that either, but it's a very cool idea.
Yeah, I guess I can't remember if it was a DevCon thing or where I'd heard somebody talking about it. And it's like, oh, I wonder if that would work here. Because the biggest concern I had was, sometimes if you use execute SQL, it can really slow things down. But luckily, it was a simple calculation without, too in depth, and it didn't seem to really impact the speed of the page loading. But it was something that was always going to be calculated as each new record loaded and did exactly what the customer needed. And I didn't have to try to modify schema to create an actual calculation field. So just thought I'd share that. Anybody else have any questions or comments? I've got a few things to wrap up, Beth, but if you want to go ahead and jump in and share your one more thing.
All right. Why does it jump there all the time? Okay, so this is just something I threw together yesterday. I had a client tell me that they have, so it's a company that does inspections. You've seen their tool before, the home inspection iPad app that I've shown off here before. But they said, now we're going to get into the business of doing treatment proposals. So when they do a termite inspection, now they want to send out a proposal with treatment options. And he didn't want to have to do everything manually. So I said, well, we know most information. Now this, I haven't actually hooked it up to his current inspection file yet, but it's just a super simple, and it's very big buttons and stuff, because the main person who will be doing this has FileMaker Go on his iPad. He's not using a desktop computer. He will be connected to the hosted file, but he's not using the desktop computer. So I designed it to work on an iPad. So that's why it kind of looks funny on screen, because this is a computer. But basically you just, hit a proposal and put in, a name and your address, and oops, I can't type. I don't know the zip there, and I'm not going to bother with an email at the moment. Whoops. But then you just make your selections. Okay, what treatment, what structures are we going to treat? Okay, the main house and the garage. What type of property is it? It's a townhouse. Okay, whatever. You can select multiple if you want to. I'll select a bunch just to show you. What type of foundation do they have? You can select more than one. If you, pick other, you can put anything you want. And what type of treatment are they going to do? Termites and carpenter bees, whatever. And then some big chunk of text would go here, And added some more, so it's something to see. And renewable warranty, sure. Transferable, no. Pick one or both of these. And then, you put in, I have no idea what this would be. You can put a discount. Let's say I put 10, I can do dollars. So it shows $10 or percent, and that shows 10%. So you pick what kind of discount you're giving. And it does the math, and it knows that Philadelphia is 8% sales tax. And if I went up here and I changed it to a different place, then it's going to use 6% sales tax, because it knows based on, Philadelphia is 8%, everything else in that area is 6%. And then this is some dynamic stuff that goes into the report. And then I can create a PDF. And, where'd it go? Oh, it went right to my documents folder, I think, and it didn't tell me it's there. Yeah, here we go, today at 8:08. So here is the document that I just created. Anytown, that's what I just did. Those are the structures, the types, and so on. Whoops, sorry, here's the check boxes I made. Here's the math. And then if you look here, that was the 18 months, that was the 175. And down here's your total again, and then place to sign. So it was just a super quick way to give them a nice looking PDF. And let me just jump back in here for 1 second and show you there's also the ability to add a photo. Oops. And I don't know if I have any pictures here, but we'll just pick anything just to show you. So yeah, if I'm just going to preview it instead of creating a new one, that puts the photo there on the front page instead of it being blank. So just kind of a quick and dirty little tool to let them enter some information and generate a nice looking PDF real quick on the fly. And there is going to be, so when you hit new proposal, they're going to be asked, do you already know the inspection ID or the client ID? And if it's yes, they're going to put that in. And if that's the case, then it will pre-populate all of this information with what it already knows from an existing client, and they won't have to pick it again. And even the structures and the treatment type would be pre-populated, because those would come from a known inspection. So I don't have that turned on yet, but that's going to happen tomorrow. Oh, and it'll have the cover photo from the home inspection or the termite inspection as well. So just a quick and dirty way to create proposals, and that's it.
Very nice. I'll go ahead and share my screen now. Anybody else think of one more thing before we move on? Just a few public service announcements. The first one is just some shameless self-promotion. Cross IT is going to be doing another one of our FileMaker Lunch and Learns here on April 20th, starting at noon. If you want to tune in as Todd Talks Custom Functions, I'll include the link and everything in the follow-up email if anybody is interested. Second public service announcement, I think this one's a little bit old now, but FileMaker 19.4 is available for both Pro and Server updates. You can see the release notes for all of the details on issues that were addressed and new features that were added, that kind of thing. The last one, just because we haven't seen it in a while, is that we're on LinkedIn and Slack. I'll try to do a better job of updating things on Slack as far as when stuff is posted, and updated as far as member recording or the meeting recordings and things like that. So you can check that out. Last month, we asked a few questions. The first one was, of the forgotten functions discussed during the meeting, which ones do you plan to use more often, or at least remember for possible future use? Majority said that definitely the design functions are ones that they're going to remember, along with the get layout object attribute. Second question was when building FileMaker solutions that share data with third-party programs, which data formats have you used? If it's surprisingly or unsurprisingly, nobody is integrated with DBase, but the expected majority, everybody has done something with Microsoft Excel. So, and you can see where everything else falls in there. And then the last question that we asked is that to imagine you serve aboard the USS Enterprise, which Star Trek The Next Generation character would you be? And I don't know what it says about us as FileMaker developers, but the majority identified with Lieutenant Commander Data, who happens to be the android on the show. So there you go.
Better that than war.
Yeah. All right, so important dates. Our next meeting will be on May 4th, your first Wednesday of May. Claris Engage 2022 has moved online. More details are to be coming soon, but there's the link to the message from Brad, about the hard decision that they made to move Engage online again for this year. And then the other important date is that I know it's been out on streaming services, but you can bring Spider-Man No Way Home on Blu-ray this coming Tuesday. So, woohoo! Our next topic is still to be determined. Like I said, it will be on May 4th. We will be sending out a follow-up survey, possibly tomorrow, but probably more likely I'll be getting it out to everyone on Friday, and I'll include FM BetterForms and stuff if anybody wants to dig into that and check it out a little bit more. Guess last is thank you, Beth, for an excellent presentation.
Quite welcome.
So that is all that I have.
Yeah.
Anybody else have anything to add before we call it an evening?
Nope.
Well, I guess it would be a meeting. I guess I do have one more thing that I can share.
You have one more thing?
Yes. So I shared this joke at the office, and this was a big hit this week, so I'll share it again with all of you. But so I bought a new pair of shoes this past week, but I got them from a drug dealer. I don't know what he laced them with, but I was tripping all afternoon.
Uh-huh.
I know that's awful, but there you go.
Well, since Paul didn't come to the meeting, you had to give us a joke.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yes, I had to fill in the gap. Yes.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you all for taking some time out of your Wednesday evening. So, and again, thank you, Beth. So.
Yeah,
Yes.
that was very good. Thank you.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good
Night.
Yep.
I guess
See you next month.
we'll see you all next time.
See you next month.